Hello class, today we're going to be learning about the rock cycle. Now rock cycle stands for circle, and for the rock cycle we're learning how rocks are formed, the different types of rocks, and how the different types of rocks relate to one another. So the different types of rocks we have are igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks, and sedimentary rocks. And they get their names because of how they were formed. So we'll start off by talking about igneous rocks. Igneous rocks are formed from magma, and magma is just a word that stands for lava that's underneath the ground. So it hasn't come up out of a volcano yet. So that hot magma, when it cools, it turns into igneous rocks because when through that cooling process it forms a rock. And so igneous rocks are classified based on how they're cooled. So if a rock cools from lava coming out onto the Earth's surface and cooling really quickly, then it's going to be very smooth and not have much graining to it. And then if it cools over time, like from the lava just rising in the ground to a point where it cools a little bit and then it rises a little more and cools a little more, then you're going to see graining in it because it's showing how the rock was cooling at different parts over time instead of all at once. So that would give you like granite and things like what you have on your kitchen counters. So then when igneous rocks are weathered, and weathering means like when rain and storms hit the rocks, it kind of makes bits of the rock flake off and maybe come off as like kind of powdery. And when that happens, those bits of the rock that come off, or small and little, we call sediment. So that could be like little itty bitty grains of rocks would be sediment. And when that sediment sediment kind of looks like sand or dirt. So when those like pieces clump together and compact, so when pressure of like, say the sediment gets buried underground while the pressure of the earth on top of it makes the sediment compact together, so come together. And when those pieces of sediment come together, they form sedimentary rock. And so since sedimentary rock is formed by a bunch of different little pieces of rock coming together, you can usually see like different types of rock in it. It's not going to look like it's one solid smooth rock. There's usually little pieces in it. And then when a sedimentary rock gets heated up and feels pressure, so goes further underground towards where that magma is coming up, then it's going to have the heat from underground and then the pressure of the earth and gravity above it pushing it further down. And so that heat and pressure turns it into what we call metamorphic rocks. And metamorphic rocks are called that because they've changed from either an igneous rock into a metamorphic rock or a sedimentary rock into a metamorphic rock. So like how we were talking about this cycle, so yes, there is a circle of sorts where the magma becomes igneous and the igneous becomes sediment and the sediments become sedimentary rock and the sedimentary rock become metamorphic, but we also have transitions happening in the middle of the circle. So one of those transitions is that igneous rock could skip becoming sediments and sedimentary rock and go straight to being a metamorphic rock. And this happens if heat and pressure are placed upon the igneous rock. So after the magma is already cooled and become an igneous rock, then it experiences heat and pressure again. So say, goes under the ground, interacts with more magma, then it might become a metamorphic rock because it would be changing from the type of rock that it is into a new type. So kind of like how we learned with the butterflies, when they come from being a caterpillar and get in that cocoon and transform into a butterfly, that's called a metamorphosis. And so it's the same concept with rocks. When it changes from one type of rock into a totally new type of rock, then it's going to be a metamorphic rock. Because when the igneous rock turns into sediments, those sediments aren't a rock in and of themselves. So sedimentary rock isn't formed from another type of rock, and magma isn't formed from another type of rock. So in either of those cases, you're not transitioning straight from one type of rock to another. Whereas with transitioning from sedimentary or igneous to metamorphic, you're going straight from one type of rock to another due to heat and pressure from the earth. And then if metamorphic rocks experience melting, so they get heated up even more, then they can turn back into magma. And so that's how it's a cycle, because you can have the magma to igneous, igneous to sediment, sediment to sedimentary, sedimentary to metamorphic, and metamorphic to magma. So you can see this all in the image that I've placed up on the board. And I hope that gives you a little insight into what we call the rock cycle. Next class, I'll show you my rock collection, and maybe we'll see if we can figure out how to classify the different types of rocks. But for now, I hope you all have a good rest of the day and that you learned a little about rocks.